South Africa's libraries have a relatively short but lively history, which encompasses the establishment, development of, and occasional damage to a great many kinds of bibliographic collections. A theme that prevails, however, is a determination to promote literacy. In spite of challenges to this mission from various quarters over the centuries, our libraries are many and varied, and constitute a vibrant aspect of the country's cultural life. The genesis of South Africa's public libraries can be traced to a number of private collections, which were later made available for general access. The most extensive of these early private collections was owned by a colonial administrator, Joachim von Dessin. In 1761, he bequeathed his collection to the Dutch Reformed Church, with a specific wish that it forms the basis of a public library for the advantage of the entire community. Among the 3,856 books and treasures were first editions of works by Descartes and part of the diary of the influential Adam Tuss, which the benefactor had painstakingly copied. Nearly 60 years later, in 1820, his vision was fulfilled as the Dessinian collection was transferred to the newly established South African Public Library, where it has remained ever since. A wine merchant, John Collison, had persuaded the governor, Lord Charles Somerset, to establish the library, which was initially funded through the imposition of a special tax on every cask of wine and spirits brought into the town. A further half-century later, in 1874, the Maltino Regulations were introduced. The system of government grants was designed to stimulate the creation of public libraries, especially in smaller towns and villages, which would be open to all without regard to race or class. This led to the Cape Colony having one of the greatest concentrations of libraries anywhere in the world. The regulations were widely adopted, especially after Union in 1910, and remained in force until 1955. Meanwhile, another initiative had taken root as early as 1803, when Johannes van der Kemp of the London Missionary Society set up a library for a school at Bethelsdorp Mission Station near Port Elizabeth. He requested books from friends on a range of subjects, including geography, arts, history, chemistry, and anatomy, as well as Latin and Greek grammars and dictionaries. The London-based Religious Tract Society continued the supplies of books well into the 20th century and successfully launched a reading room and a library at the Volata Hostel for black mine workers in Johannesburg in 1939. This library later became a depot of the Carnegie Corporation stable of non-European libraries, where the mission-educated poet and dramatist Herbert Lomo was the organizer librarian. Mutual improvement and self-help organizations had also emerged in the second half of the 19th century. They championed the benefits of reading and promoted the growth of a black readership across the country. Saul Plaatje, author and founder member of the South African Native National Congress, was a member of such a society in Kimberley. From the 1950s onwards, the apartheid government introduced efforts at thought control, including segregated library facilities and the Bantu Education Act. In response, progressive organizations sought to develop and sustain library and reading facilities in rural areas, townships, and prisons. Resource centers emerged in the 1970s and 1980s in response to school boycotts and poor library provision in black areas. They gradually aligned with the mass democratic movement and became associated with the idea of people's education as people's libraries and alternative libraries. By 1992, there were over 100 resource centers that focused on education, career development, trade unions, and general information. Through the ages, the sustained efforts of visionary individuals, volunteers, religious, cultural, and political organizations have nurtured a passion for reading and a love of books. Whether it be the National Library of South Africa, legal deposit libraries, public libraries, school, university, and college libraries, or special libraries, like the South African Library for the Blind, libraries run by professional associations, and those attached to museums, art galleries, and archives, their legacy is undeniable. And it is clear that the thirst for knowledge is unlikely to be sated in the centuries that lie ahead.